Well, welcome everyone. I see that we are joined from a couple of fine gentlemen from St. Louis, Carlos Mayfield, and one of the finest finance guys, Mr. Patrick Davis, has joined us also. But we're going to this is a day of which we get to learn from the feet of at least two of our elders. Mike Jones being spotlit tonight. And as many of you all know, his public career spans for over 4 decades. In the 80s, he was a member of St. Louis Board of Aldermen and served as executive director of the St. Louis Housing Authority. In the 1990s, Mr. Jones was a corporate affairs regional manager for Anheuser-Busch companies. In that role, he was responsible for community relations in large urban cities in the Midwest. He then served St. Louis Mayor Clarence Harmon as chief of staff and deputy mayor for development. During the 2000s, he was the executive director of the Greater St. Louis Regional Empowerment Zone. That's a whole nother story, the elimination of that, of which I am still not, does not sit well with me. That was a federally funded community and economic development initiative. And from 2005 until his retirement in 2015, Mr. Jones was senior policy advisor for the St. Louis County Executive Charlie Dooley. In March of 2011, the Governor Jay Nixon at the time appointed Mr. Jones to the Missouri State Board of Education, where he served until March of 2020. Since his retirement, he's been a member of the editorial board of the St. Louis American newspaper, one of the nation's leading Black weeklies. And Mr. Jones writes an award-winning column on an ongoing basis. In 2017, 2018, and 2024, Mr. Jones was named Best Serious Columnist for the state's large weeklies by the Missouri Press Association. And in 2018, Mr. Jones was also awarded the Best Serious Columnist by the National Newspaper Association. A St. Louis native, he is a graduate of the University of Missouri St. Louis. He is a Hall of Fame father and husband. He's a man that is very generous with his time. And yeah, it is, humbling and rewarding at the same time to introduce to some and to reintroduce to others, as we call him, the Mike Jones.
Good evening, gentlemen. And Larry, that was over the top. And I'm generous with my time because I don't have much money. So I give away the only thing I got.
Well, money cannot pay for the time that you've given us. And I'm sure the individuals here today will feel the same way. And I'm going to be very, very brief and hand this over to you. But Mike, as we have discussed, this is probably, you've stated this. I stated this is the most important election that we've seen in my lifetime. You've stated that this may be the most important election that we've seen since the Civil War. And you have written 2 articles that call the landscape the way it is. And it puts to rest a number of the issues that have been meandering through media and landing in an area that I don't think it needs to land. So if you wouldn't mind delving into the series of articles that I think set the groundwork for our evening.
Yeah, thanks, Larry. And yeah, my point in writing those, because matter of fact, I made a decision not to write anything about the presidential election all year, just because it gets redundant and nothing ever really changes, and it really it's kind of like the NBA. It really don't matter till the end anyway. So, but one of the things that I wanted to do is, I think you have to look at this particular campaign on 2 different levels. And for me, the first level is the context, the larger context of the campaign, because we have tendency to look at campaigns like, or all moments like this moment, just kind of, to quote Vice President Harris, dropped out of a coconut tree. And like it's been here all along, but every moment you're in has a story. It comes from someplace. So when I look at where we are in the United States right now, uh, for me, I see a country that is suffering an existential angst as a result of a major and historical paradigm shift. I mean, Donald Trump, for me, didn't cause anything. He is the result of some things that are happening. And what I mean by that is historically, if you take the United States, we've been a binary country. You could explain everything in America in terms of black and white, us and them. Okay. As late as 1960, the country was 85% white, about 12, about 11%, 12% black, and less than 4% Hispanic. Now, you go up 56 years to 2020, uh, the country is now 60, 61% white. It's still 12% black, but it's now 19% Hispanic and 6% Asian, with another 10% of the population self-identifying as multiracial. So basically, when you add up those numbers just quickly, that's 47% of the population that self-identifies as something other than white. So we've gone from a country that was predominantly white, overwhelmingly white, to one that is marginally got a white majority, and that majority is even shrinking. So if you go down to younger ages, the country is rapidly becoming browner, let's say. So historically, when it was, the country was 85% white, they could be both white supremacists and democratic at the same time. Okay, I mean, we didn't count with the others, and so basically, decisions got made by white people, including the decisions to keep us as second-class citizens. What has happened over the last 50 years, the country has changed. I mean, and it is, and demography, like geography, is fate, and it's not going back. So now you have a country that is majority white, but not dominantly white. And it's hard to then be a democratic white supremacist country when less than 60% of the people are white and the rest and everybody else is something else. So I think when you look at this particular election, or even Trump getting elected in 2016, which was really a response to 8 years of Obama, you are looking at a white population, an older white population, because there's some demographics that are going on that changes all of the political mix, or really coming to grips with that the America they youth, the one that they were curated in, it's not the America of today, and it won't be the America going forward. So that creates paradigm shifts like this or any other, really create an insecurity and a lot of social tension. And in that case, you get things that look like we got now. And it's why a candidate like a Trump, who is basically kind of unhinged, is really representative of the population that is supporting him and sending in. Because so this is not a campaign of policy differences or philosophical differences. What you're looking at the emotional response of a large number of white Americans to this changing landscape, and how that literally affects them. So I don't, I don't think the way we talk about it on television, the way pundits talk about it, they try to make this appear to still be an extreme version of a normal election. And that's why it can get confusing. To me, once you take a step back and look at it as a larger emotional response to this changing demographic and cultural mix that's the United States, then the behavior you see starts to even look rational, or at least it's logical, because it is the consequence of that insecurity. And so you could almost argue, since Charles is on the line, that a large segment of white America needs therapy more than they need politics, because that's what they'll have to come to grips with. And I'll give you a small example, a smaller, more what do I call it? A more understandable example of a major paradigm shift and how it can impact people. If we took 1947, Jackie Robinson integrates Major League Baseball. Nobody black had ever played Major League Baseball before then. Satchel Paige, Scott Gibson, two of the greatest baseball players in history, couldn't play in the major leagues. And for anybody alive today, not alive in 1947, but alive today, really doesn't think that's a big deal, especially if you were born in the last 40 years or so. And you can't imagine black players not playing in the major leagues. You can't even imagine black people couldn't sit anywhere they wanted, could afford a ticket in the stands. And it just seems absurd, because I think most people would say that was good for baseball. We've seen some of the most extraordinary ball players over the last 40, 50 years that wouldn't have been possible but for that moment. But I'd have you think about this. That'd be the best way to say it. Nobody can tell you the name of the white guy that was playing center field for the New York Giants before Willie Mays. And as great an impact positively as Branch Rickey's signing Jackie Robinson was for baseball, I don't think the white guy playing center field for the Giants felt that way when Willie Mays reported to the Giants from AAA. And one of the things we have never talked about in this country, we don't talk about it, white folks don't talk about it, that the displacement that happens when you have to compete against everybody. So staying with my baseball analogy, so you can think about it writ large, there were still only 25 players on a baseball team. Okay, so when you make it possible for Jackie Robinson or Don Newcomb, or then eventually Henry Aaron or Willie Mays, Ernie Banks, Larry Doby, you name it, you didn't add players, you took players away, because there was a mediocre average white player who was good enough to be a major league ball player in an all-white major league, who is now not good enough to be a major league ball player in an integrated major league. So baseball got better, but he got dislocated. Now, if you start to think of a society that begins to change the way it looks, and it goes from a society based on white male privilege to one that's a lot more competitive. And in this regard, uh, I don't want to say it's the unintended consequences, but it was the consequences of another piece of revolutionary uh, legislation in the 1960s. Lyndon Johnson gets credit for the Civil Rights Act of 64 and the Voting Rights Act of 65 and the impact that they have on society. But another piece of legislation that was equally as transformational was the 1965 Immigration Act that eliminated racial quotas from the American immigration system. And from that day to this, you now see the impact of that, but also it was necessary if the United States, as economically, was going to grow and be viable. So if you took the immigration population of the last 40, 50 years, and they weren't available, the economy of the United States would look like a third world country. So you're confronted, if you are trying to manage through all of this, you have white Americans, a great many of who have this expectation of certain things being basically displaced or added to by all these other people, sometimes us, sometimes immigrants of color from all over the world. And that has created a major dislocation, both politically, but also culturally, because this is a culturally different place now. So and the population has radically changed, not just demographically, but age-wise over the last 4 or 5 decades. And so I think for me, you have to understand that history to begin to make sense of this moment politically. And I think when you take that step back or that longer look, everything we've gone through over the last 8 years with Trump doesn't look that strange. Matter of fact, and again, I would have Charles, if he feels better, to help me out with this. But I'm sure mental health professionals or social scientists could tell you that, matter of fact, their reaction is probably par for the course when you have these kind of paradigm shifts and dislocations. But we could do either one or two things. If anybody wants to deal with that in a little bit more detail, we can talk about it for a minute, or I can make a shift and really just talk about, with that context, the Harris campaign. And since we're literally a week out, what people think it looks like, and what I'll give you is my guess. So Larry, what's your pleasure?
My pleasure is, unless there is an objection by anyone that's listening, welcome to everyone. For those that I do not know, I'm Larry Fields out of St. Louis, and we are joined by the individuals of the diaspora as well. Want to welcome all of you all, but unless there is any objection, I would rather have you just go ahead and transition directly into the snapshot that we are seeing now with the backdrop and the foundation that you just laid.
Okay. Since you guys are in California, I thought this quote would be appropriate. There's a guy, William, he was screenwriter and novelist, William Goldman, and he has this quote about Hollywood, and it's really applicable to electoral politics, particularly presidential politics. He says nobody knows anything. Not one person in the entire motion picture field knows for certainty what's going to work. Every time out, it's guesswork. And if you're lucky, an educated guess. That is really presidential politics. I mean, we got an overload of people on every conceivable channel and viewing system with commentary and comments about what's going on. And the reality is you can kind of quantify, even qualify somewhat an election, but they're hard to predict. So, and it's particularly hard to predict presidential election, not because you can't figure out the popular vote, because that gets to be fairly easy, but because of the electoral college basically makes this a state by state election, and the first presidential candidate to get to 270 electoral votes. So that means a national election, it has for the last 20 years or so, and this week is no different, really comes down to what's going on in 7 or 8 states at any point in time. And that's literally where we are, and the states can get that close. And because of that, it's hard to predict. And anybody who really knows what they're doing won't predict. But people who got to put on TV shows got to fill up their airtime with something. So they'll bring somebody on to offer an informed opinion that is at best an educated guess. One of the things that I just said, that you could make an assessment though on the factors of a campaign and what's going and what are the elements that'll determine a win and a loss, and how are those elements performing. And so I'll give you, you obviously can start with the candidate and the campaign. So here's my view of the Kamala Harris, the candidate, and the Harris-Walsh campaign, based on, for whatever it's worth, about 4 decades of doing this stuff, being fairly serious about it, because it was kind of my business. In 2016, I would have told you I didn't think Kamala Harris was ready to be the president, had the skill sets, enough talent to make that jump. But I also would have told you I thought she was the best political athlete of that Democratic cohort. That, Larry knows I'm a kind of basketball guy, so she would be a player I'd be coming back at. She's a freshman, she ain't ready yet, but she's got something special. And her emergence as vice president, obviously, she's put in a serious amount of work. And when you look at her becoming the Democratic nominee on July 21st with absolutely no preparation, and you look at her performance from then until this moment, this evening, she has not been good. She's been perfect. Literally, her execution as a candidate, you could do something different, but I've never seen anybody be that good day in and day out. particularly coming down the stretch. And then when you see where she started from a deficit with Biden, with no prep time, it's really nothing short of remarkable. Her campaign, the mechanics of it, the messaging, the fundraising ability has also been perfect. Now, again, everybody has different opinions about they'd have done a little of this and they'd have done a little of that, but fundamentally, you could not have, quote, played better than she and they have played in this moment. And I would describe her as literally like Patrick Mahomes. I mean, she's done everything necessary and then some to put Democrats in a winning position. And you probably could have got some great odds in Las Vegas that she would have never been this good, and you might have made enough money to retire on because you're going to collect that bet. And if Democrats don't prevail, if she doesn't prevail, literally, I can tell you this: it will not be because she in this campaign did or didn't do anything. They've been perfect. So and I kind of want to stay in this football metaphor and use our analogy and use it a little bit. And one of the things you need to understand about elections, I just spent quite a few minutes talking about the demographic changes in America. And that's true every day but election day. On election day, America is much whiter than it is every other day. And that's for a couple of reasons. The white population is much older, and older people vote with more regularity and at a higher rate. The non-white population is a lot younger and don't vote with the frequency and with the volume. For example, in 2020, first for 2016, 2020, 73%, 71% of the eligible white voters turned out. In those same two elections, about 58% of the voters are color. So big difference. And 71% of eligible white voters turned out in the 2020 election, and that's a sizable discrepancy as opposed to Black, Hispanic, and Asians, but it balances out because Asians, Black people specifically, and Hispanics give Democrats such large margins. So it really starts to balance out a little bit, and that makes for close national elections. Just take a look at it, and I'll show you kind of what I'm talking about and how I think this will impact Harris, the Harris-Trump campaign. If you take 2016, Hillary Clinton got 91% of the Black vote, 98% of Black women. She got 60% of the Hispanic vote and 65% of the Asian vote. But she only got 39% of the white vote, and she only got 45% of white women. In 2020, Biden trended almost the same way. He got 93% of the Black vote, 60% of the Hispanic vote, 65% of the Asian vote, but only 41% of the white vote and 46% of white women. But he won the Electoral College and Clinton didn't, and that made the difference in the election because he carried those blue wall states, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, by 211,000 votes. And that won him the Electoral College. In 2016, she lost the same three states by 80,000 votes, and that gave the election to Trump. So in both cases, the 2020 election, 150 plus million people voted, and 211,000 votes decided the election. When Biden beat Trump by 9 million, Clinton beat Trump by 3 or 4 million, and she loses because of three states. So that is not strange. One of the interesting facts is that Democrats have not won a majority of the white vote in America since Lyndon Johnson in 1964. Just to go back to our frame of reference earlier, our context earlier, Lyndon Johnson passed the Voting Rights Act in 1964, and white people have been Republicans literally ever since. And that is an interesting phenomenon. So this race always comes down to a huge people of color turnout, and Democrats hope they can hold their own among white voters. Where we're at now is a real interesting set of circumstances because of Larry, if I get this right, Dobbs versus Jackson, what is it, Health Center or whatever, the Supreme Court.
That's correct.
You're right.
That's correct.
And that overturned Roe v. Wade and literally put every woman at risk in America. Since that time, every vote for restoring women's right to choose their bodily autonomy with health care has carried today, no matter how red the state. So the outlier in this Harris campaign is now white women. And so and here's why that's a big deal. In 2020, I think 68 or 69%, I'm sorry, I want to look to make sure I got this right. 67 million white women voted in the 2020 election. 58% of them voted for Donald Trump. That's 39 million people. Why this is critical is because Republicans, Trump specifically, 85% of his vote was made up of white Americans. So he doesn't have any surpluses anyplace else. So he literally depends on a loyal white base to win an election. So any shift in the white women's vote will be truly impactful to this election. And that takes us back to the Supreme Court case overturning Roe. And that is, where are white women on election day? So I've kind of created this football metaphor. It's if Vice President Harris is our Patrick Mahomes and our quarterback has done everything that they need to do and then some to put us in a position to win. And despite what everybody's saying, I don't think Black men not voting for Kamala Harris is a thing. I say this because the only group that ever outvotes black men in support of Democrats is black women. So my position is black women will turn out gangbusters, and black men will show up equally as well, not equal, but as well. And she'll get 85 to 90% of the black male vote. And we'll be Scottie Pippen to the sisters, Michael Jordan. And I think we deliver. I think she will do better than Clinton and Biden with Asians and Hispanics. And if I said that before Trump and the fiasco in Madison Square Garden Sunday, I'm damn near guaranteed I'm right now. So she'll pick that up. So my metaphor is that you could call the black vote her offense. And in a football game, what you need is your offense to score enough points that can win the game. You know, it'd be great if they blow somebody off the field. But if they get you 24, 25, 26, that's enough to win a game. That's 3 touchdowns and change. Your special teams is the other element that has to produce for you. And I'm saying that's the Hispanic and Asian vote. And for me, the special teams don't have to make big plays. They just got to not give up big plays. No, nobody else gets a chance to run one back, and they don't get any punch blocked, any of that. And that means right now, with a week to go, I would suggest that we are leading by 4 or 5 at the end of the game with 2 minutes, about 2.5 minutes to go. And Trump Republicans got the ball. So we have to turn to white women as the defense to say, you got to keep them out the end zone. They can't, a field goal won't beat us. Takes a touchdown, and it'll be up to the defense. So this race will not come down to, in my opinion, although people will try to blame it on us before something happens. And that's where the black men story starts from. But it will not come down to the black turnout, because we're going to do what we need to do. And Asians and the Latino vote will do what it does. And this will all come down to, will white women vote for themselves, or will they sign up to be part of the Handmaid's Tale? So the interesting part there, and I'd rather deal with that in a question and answer, is when you start looking at these generational changes in who makes up this 330 million people. So if Trump loses 3 or 4% of the white women of white women that he had 4 years ago, not only does he lose, he gets killed. And if I was a betting man, and I have been, and I'll just go take a flyer, my prediction is Kamala Harris is the 47th president of the United States, and it won't be close. It'll be much by a margin than people think.
Well, that table's been laid. And at this point, I'm going to open it up for Professor to take over. Professor, you go right ahead, and as you may. Thank you so much, Mr. Jones.
Yeah, appreciate what Brother Mike Jones have said, and if I understand him correctly, first of all, I want to say Asante Sana, which is many thanks for that excellent analysis and your perspectives of the politics from a historical point all the way up to today. I taught politics of the Black community at Cal State Long Beach for years. And if it's anything you learn that racism trumps everything, even abortions. That's why you see white women at Trump's rallies. And if you look at the rallies a lot, the majority of them are white women. White women have always supported racism, either through silence, but they benefit from it. All white people benefit from racism because it makes them feel that they're more supreme or better than all. A poor white man feels better than sometimes the middle class or white Black brother, because there ain't that many. It's hard to be in the middle if you don't have a top producing you. And what happens with that, they call some Black people think they're middle class. They may be upper middle working class, but they're not middle class as far as all the dimensions of classism. Now, getting back to the politics, because it takes Black politics or economics to produce a Black middle class. If our middle class is our top, percentage-wise, then they're not produced by Black people. Black people are not hiring them or paying them the middle class salaries or giving them the middle class status. But let me just get back to this politics. American politics have always been corrupt, all the way up to today. From its racism and sexism, not letting women vote in the 1920s, till you couldn't vote for years unless you owned property and were white. Black people participated in politics in the early years. And some people like to separate colonialism, America's colonies, from the states or America. But they were both dominated by whites in the Holocaust of enslavement and denial of the Native American. Anybody that wasn't white couldn't participate in American society. When they say melting pot, they mean Irish, Polish, British, and French, and Portuguese, and all of them who came here. And they set up their own jurisprudence system and their own political system. They were not inclusive. Native Americans who this land belonged to, or were the occupants of this land, could not participate in white politics. But white folks could participate in their politics by determining who would run the reservations and things of this nature. But getting up into the day, politics is nothing but gangbanging. They say politics is war without violence, and war is politics with violence. And you see it all the time. The nature of street gangs come from a model that America set politically. The Republicans are red. The Crips are red. I mean, Bloods are red. And the Democrats are blue, and Crips are blue. By any means necessary, you try to win. There's no morals or ethics in American politics. You look for things to be bad, or you make up things bad about your people while you teach people not to call people names, not to lie, be honest, be truthful. And it's like they've been inclusive. The Black vote in America has a very, Fannie Lou Hamer. You can go to James Meredith, C.C. Vivian, going all the way up from the 60s, all the way up to the 80s and 90s and to today. Machinda talks about what they're doing in Louisiana as far as this new governor that's just a grown man. I'm pretty sure Machinda talked about that. But we had Governor Wallace, who was a Democrat, straight segregationist out of Alabama. And people voted for him, women, white women. The suppression of the Black vote, it's just like when Mike Jones used baseball as an analysis. It took years before they recognized Black baseball teams and players in their own league, Negro League, as they call it, to be inclusive of their statistics. But they was counting white statistics when there was segregation. And the only way some Black people could play is that they were light, and they said they were Indians or said they were somebody else. But Jackie Robinson was the first American Negro that played baseball, but there were others, according to a history of the Black participation in American baseball. But there was segregation all the time, just up to 1948. And I'm just saying that we look at politics as if we was inclusive. Now, y'all was there with Stokes, who was the first Black mayor of St. Louis. You know, that was a struggle.
That was Cleveland.
In Cleveland. And was he in Cleveland?
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Yes,
I'm sorry. Stokes was? Oh, well, I'm sorry. Well, Cleveland. And then,
and don't forget about Gary.
yeah, Gary, Indiana,
Right.
all of that. All I'm saying is that even up to today, they're suppressing the Black vote. And many Black people don't vote. They just don't vote. But the ones that do vote, it's a higher percentage than most minorities because of the struggle that we had to vote. Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. And they were about voting, registering Black people to vote. Lyons County, that was about registering Black people to vote. Mississippi Freedom Party, that's about Black people voting. James Meredith getting assassinated, about Black people voting. Civil rights was integration. You fought laws. Human rights, you fight people for your dignity. The question of Kamala Harris, she's losing a lot of votes because of her stand with Israel and Gaza. Nobody wants to say that. But there's a lot of Black people that don't see her the way they saw Obama. Because Obama didn't come up when genocide was going on in Gaza, although he participated in the assassination of Gaddafi and Osama bin Laden. But, you know, I mean, we got to look at things, I think, in a realistic standpoint. Many Black people are enthused and happy when Black people are running for a national office. But there are many good Black people that ran for local offices that was more relevant to Black people, and they still didn't vote. You understand? I mean, we got to, and there's a reason for it. First, the lack of education. When Gordon G. said we are miseducated, he meant politically, economically, educational attainment, and not only miseducated by the school system, by leaving us out of history and culture, but we was educated by the image of white people trying to be like them. Like you can, just because you act like them, talk like them, like you included. And when it was about pigmentation and miscegenation with them, they're a minority in the world, but they rule it with the gun. They are the minority of the world. Most, I mean, you can just look at that, they're about 15% of the world population. But they dominate. You can call them Russians, you can call them European Jews, but whatever. But when we get back to Kamala, she was more qualified than Trump in 2016. She was more qualified than Schwarzenegger and Mayor Bradley in 1980s was more qualified than Duke Majan for governor of California. White people have been voting race for years. And the only reason why the race is close is not because Trump's a bad candidate. White folks are pursuing politics as the pursuit, maintenance, and utilization of power. Power is the social capacity to realize. Yeah, I'm gonna cut out right now. cut what you're saying, cut your capacity to enforce your will in opposition of others. And so you see how the European is doing that. How could this man get 77 million votes? After an insurrection against Biden. And how could a man be a convicted felon and be nominated for president? And he's a convicted felon of 39 counts. And if you get one count, you can't be a policeman, you can't be a teacher, you can't be anything, but he can be president. That's the hypocrisy. All right, that's it.
Professor, you raise very, very interesting points. And one subject I'd like to have Mr. Jones address, and that is the complications that sex and race add into any national or statewide race. And I think that might be part of the difficulty in being able to predict this. But Mr. Jones, what is your take on those two elements as they come into play in this situation?
I think relative to that, I agree with Brother Rahh that ultimately the driver in America is race. Because like I said, the majority of white women don't vote Democratic either. It's just the overwhelming majority of white men don't. But here is what I don't think we spend enough time talking about. And I don't mean talking about, I mean examining. That if you take the average age of us on this call, the America that we were shaped in, formed in, whatever term of art you want to use, is totally different than the America of somebody who's 25. And I'll give you an example. I'm 75, so that makes me a baby boomer. And in the 80s, the baby boomers were like 33, 34% of the population. Today, baby boomers are 21%. The folks old enough to be our parents are only 5% of the population. And the largest segment of the population is what they call millennials, people born between 1965 and 1980. There's 65 million of them, and they're 20% of the population. So when you add that with this emerging population of Gen Zers, literally 40% of the adults who are going to vote in this election were born like after 1970. So whatever their views are, they've been shaped by a different American experience than, I'll say, mine. Because while I wasn't quite old enough to go to the ballpark and see Jackie Robinson, I actually was around enough grown Black men, especially in my father's barbershop, to know how impactful he was, because they talked about it all the time. But if you are 25 years old today, you were born in 1999, not only didn't you see Jackie Robinson, you don't know anybody that saw Jackie Robinson. You don't know anybody who lived through the Great Depression or World War II. So whatever, and that starts to get to be, as we go through these generations, ancient history. And I think, I know it's true of me but I try to be more aware of it now than I used to be, that it's difficult for me to make judgments about what I think somebody 50 years younger than me ought to do based on my frame of references that was shaped 50, 60 years ago. And they're 25 and their American experience all happened in the last 25 years. So they are, if you're 25, you were 9 years old when Barack Obama got elected. Kamala Harris isn't even the first woman in your lifetime to seriously be considered for president of the United States. Hillary Clinton was that. I literally don't know how that changes how somebody 25, black or white, sees race. Okay. Now I know it don't fundamentally change how I see it, but as those, Larry, we were talking in the Blue Room before we went on. We turned on the recorder for the show, and we talked about just the difference in our kids or grandkids about how you relate to them and their life, because it really, at this point, it's not a bad relationship. It's just a gap in experiences, and you have to regularly adjust for that. So all I'm saying is I will never discount race as a major factor in American life, culture, politics, economics. But I will suggest that the notions of race are more and more a function of generation and age, and I don't know what that looks like really, and I definitely don't know what it will look like in 20 years when the country is demographically a whole lot different place.
Thank you. That is once again very, very in-depth analysis on this issue, particularly as we set apart the different demographics, the demographics inside of the demographics. At this point, we want to open it up to anyone that is listening that may have a question. Feel free or comment. I see we have some people that are regularly listen to this show regularly, and an individual from the Wednesday group as well. So please, by all means.
So I'll go ahead and call on them. We'll start with Brother Rahh. Brother Rahh.
Good evening, brothers and sisters.
Good evening.
I appreciate this show. Brother, earlier when you were talking about Brother Jones, about the paradigm shift, a small group here in Michigan, I'm in Detroit.
My favorite city in America. I was fortunate enough to live in Detroit in the 90s. I thought it was the greatest place to be black in America, man.
Yeah, no place like it. Yeah, the warmth is in the people.
Right.
Then this small group that consists of 2% population here in America, approximately 211,000 people. Not a really large number, but enough to affect an election.
Right.
The numbers between Biden and Trump, the split was small enough to where this small group could affect this election.
Right.
Could that be a flaw? Now, Michigan is one of the must-have places
Right.
to, was that a mistake of Kamala's to basically be so biased in her views of that situation, and dare we say it is genocide, and the whole world is watching this. And anyone with the conscience, that's got to be, I mean, what happened to integrity and character? Are we gonna play the game that tough?
First of all, I'm gonna say it was genocide. Is genocide. So I mean,
yes,
that's clear. So that the moral question is not in place. Okay, so this is really a question of politics in this moment, and for a lot of the people that rallied to her, and this goes particularly to this issue of age now, particularly younger people, almost no matter what the ethnicity or religious persuasion was, this is a problem for them. And I think it cost her something. I don't know how much, but I think it cost her something. I'll say as a professional politician, I'll claim that you are what you what you are. I'd say she was in a no-win situation. Okay, she could do the right thing, and it was gonna cost her on one side. She could not do the right thing, and it's costing her something on this side. She's also jammed up in that she is the vice president of the United States. She's not the president, and the president is locked in on a policy that's supporting, as far as I'm concerned, a genocide in the Middle East. But in the rules of the dynamic or the calculus of the environment that she's in, she don't get the latitude to literally be separated from him, because that costs something too. So the reality is, and it's been my advice that I have given to a number of people that I work for in a situation, you got two bad choices. And so the question becomes, which problem do you want to manage? Because you don't have an option that gets you out with a plus. No matter what you pick, you got two negatives. And which one do you feel like does the least amount of damage? And so,
but basically to ignore the plight. Basically just ignore the plight. Nothing even symbolic. Like maybe having a Palestinian stand on the stage. Nothing to acknowledge that this is going on.
You won't get an argument from me. I'm not defending, I'm explaining. Okay.
Well, even if she gets in, say she gets in, what about her relationship with the rest of the world?
I think everything changes when you're sitting in the seat. Seriously, okay. Politicians have less memory than three-point shooters. Okay, that ain't hitting. Okay, so that was yesterday. Today is today. If you had lost, I might have kept talking about you. But if you won it, then okay, can we talk? And this is whether it's local politics or international politics, this is a fluid business. And just thought of a quote from, I can never say this guy's name right, Columnist. He wrote the history of the Peloponnesian War, which is the war between Athens and Sparta 2,500 years ago. They fought for 30 years. And there's this thing in his book called the Mylian Dialogue, and it's where the the ambassador from Athens goes to the city of Milos to talk to them about their alliance with Sparta that Athens wants them to give up because they're too close to geographically to Athens to be cool with Sparta. And they have this dialogue back and forth, and the Millennials keep explaining why they have to do it this way, and the ambassador keeps trying to say, no, that's not the right way. So at the end of it, the Millennials say, well, you know what it really comes down to is we gave our word, and it would be wrong not to honor the treaty. And this is the quote and the frame of reference of politics, generally speaking. The Athenian ambassador says to them in response, you and I both know that right is only a question among equals in power. The strong do what they can, the weak suffer what they must. And that you can play politics from 25 years, 100 years ago to today, national, international, local, frat politics, maybe even the church politics. And that'll be the rule. The strong do what they can, the weak suffer what they must. So how I learned this business is the one thing you should always try to strive for is never be weak. And then you got a chance to make a moral case. But if you ain't the strongest in the room, your moral argument ain't gonna get you but so far.
Thank you, Brother Jones.
We have a question from the chat. The question is, if Trump loses and Harris wins, what do you anticipate will be Trump's play or plan to overturn the election? That's coming from Pastor Mayfield out of St. Louis, Missouri.
I don't think he can do what he did 4 years ago, and here's why. 4 years ago, he was the president of the United States, and the governor of Michigan was a Republican, and I think Republicans control the legislature. I know the governor of Wisconsin was Republican, and Republicans control the legislature, and the same was true in Pennsylvania and Arizona. If you just take those 4 states, and all 4 of those states were in play when he lost. Well, in 2024, the governor of Michigan is a Democrat. In fact, so is the Attorney General and the Secretary of State, if memory serves me. And they control, if not both houses of the legislature, at least 2, at least 1 rather. In Wisconsin, the governor, Attorney General, Secretary of State, a Democrat, and Democrats control one of the chambers of the legislature and the majority of the Supreme Court. In Pennsylvania, same situation. So literally, he can't go there. And in fact, the Congress did fix the Voting Count Act, where up historically the legislature picked the slates that you sent for the electors. Now the governors have to submit them. So, I mean, I think he'll whine and bitch like he always does, but he don't really have the options that he had. And there are a ton of folks inside of the Republican establishment who got too much sugar in their tank to do anything about him, but would love to see him have to go away. And I would suggest now he got, I mean, he's got the loose hinges that make up America, and episodic individual stuff. God only knows what can happen. But he don't have the tools that he had 4 years ago. It'll be much more difficult for him to do literally anything. And if he loses, like I think he might, because I think if the race is close, he's got a chance. So I think she beats him bad, not literally, not Reagan Mondale bad, but I don't think it's going to be as close as people think. And if that's the case, pardon my French, but his ass, you can put a fork in. I mean, he won't get much help because they like to see him gone too. Not that they got any more decent than he is. They about all birds are the same feather, but you know, they like to be done with him if they could be.
Thank you for that response, Mr. Jones. Is there anyone else that has a question at this point?
Let's go
Okay.
to the Kwabena.
Go right ahead, Brother Rashid.
Brother Kwabena.
I have a couple comments. I really appreciate the data, the statistics, the information, the insight, the history, brother. It was right on point. I'm kind of with you early on, thinking that she's going to slaughter him in a selection, that she's going to win, going to surprise a lot of people and win by a lot. But also when I look at, like Professor Rahh said, and others were talking about, with this genocide that's taking place, a lot of us, including myself, definitely not voting for her, of course, not voting for him because of that genocide that's taking place. So I don't, the state I live in, Indiana, is most likely going to go red. But look back at the election of Barack Obama. I know he didn't win Indiana the second time, but he won Indiana the first time. And just so many people that went out and voted for him. I don't know. And I appreciate your thoughts too, again, about Black man. I've been hearing and reading a lot of commentaries about how brothers have felt offended by his attack of Barack Obama's attack on us. And like they said, they're going to try to make us a scapegoat if she does lose. But one thing about Trump, and this is how I felt during his first term, even though, we know how crazy and how he is, but the fact that he does not hide, he lifts the dress up. He doesn't hide stuff that's going on. He just has no filter, hardly no filter, is that he may precipitate a quicker end to this empire by his by having any filter. So I appreciate it, man. No, really no questions. Just that's just my some thoughts about what we said. But I tell you what, another thing, I can't wait till next Wednesday till this is over with, because we got some of the other issues we got to deal with. And Harris, we struggle a lot with this music piece, and she's been, been placating and been with the Grammys, with Megan Pete, with the Migos, with all these people who just mean our destruction, and these ratchet rappers. She's been cozying up to them. So
you know what?
Mike, real quick. For those that don't know, Brother Kwamanad is a man that has given a large part of his life to level set, if you will, the record, the radio, the music industry, and to bring some sort of balance and semblance, and to dial back the essentially soundtrack for killing capitalism and oppression that is now the calling card for the record industry, particularly as it pertains to our youth. So, I mean, we thank you every time I see you. Thank you. But
she's cozying up, and she cozies up to this like so many others do. So
that's another issue. But Mike, go ahead. Let me get out.
No, I was just going to say something I didn't say when I was kind of making a presentation that I forgot to say because I did have it written down. What I would say to people that no matter, and it's to your point, that no matter what happens next Tuesday, nothing in America is resolved. Okay, that the reason I kind of started with the context and the demographics, but the reality is the arc of whatever this issue is, and as long as America is a capitalist country, and as long as it's a global empire, because it is that whoever is the president, no matter what their ethnicity or what we think, you don't get to be the emperor of Rome unless you support the empire. So the cost that everybody pays to get there is you're going to have to give up whatever it was you thought you would do. I would suggest one of the intellectually, I got more interest in national politics and even international politics than I would ever have in local politics. But the reason I never got interested in doing national politics is because I thought it cost too much from my self-esteem or from a Black standpoint. There little to no high moral compromises. There's a few ethical issues in local politics, but local politics is fixing stuff, and you don't decide major moral questions of public policy. And in national politics, particularly if you're successful, you can put yourself in places where you can ultimately feel compromised from a personal standpoint in order to do your job. I mean, and I don't know Akeem Jeffries, that he could be probably a great brother, but you can't be the Black Speaker of the House of Representatives. All you can be is the Speaker of the House of Representatives. And that you go have on a daily basis things that you are having to balance and decide that you would rather not, but you don't have any choice. And I think the rationalization everybody uses, I know I probably would, is I really wish I didn't have to do this, but I'd rather be here for when I can make a difference as opposed to somebody else who wouldn't do something that they could. So, I mean, it's a complicated business, and it's kind of, if you're very young, you can be altruistic about it. Once you get grown, you realize that it's a struggle every day. And my sports metaphor would be, if you're in high school or college, you can dream of being undefeated. It's even possible to be undefeated. Nobody goes undefeated in the pros. Okay, you lose, and you got to learn to keep playing and win as many as you can, knowing you're gonna lose. So they can lose a lot some days.
That's awesome.
Hey, we have one more.
Go right ahead.
Patrick Davis.
First of all, I want to say thank you for the history, as was stated earlier. I think this the only comment that I would have, just coming from a different vantage point, raising 3 young men, and I did hear that conversation with Larry and Mike prior to us jumping in, that sometimes we have to just listen to their perspective, but I think they're missing sometimes the historical point. I know, Brother Jones, when you referenced Lyndon B. Johnson not running and that shift at that time, as I was listening to you, I was thinking maybe that was also one I always wondered, why didn't he run for that next term? Did they force him out? Was it an aspect of some of the violence that was going on from Kennedy to what was, again, there were individuals who saw that shift happening. That was always a question of mine. But again, he wasn't noted as being one who, in the very beginning, when he was added to the ticket with Kennedy, it wasn't for him to be added because he was a supporter of that shift. It was an aspect of providing additional individuals to hopefully support Kennedy to get him into office. So I guess when I look at that history, helping my sons, who as in their mind, they saw Obama, that they don't know anything else other than that. And helping them to understand that this is an important election, that even when we're talking about race, and I heard our brother's statement of, I think it's a balance of, I don't agree with the music of today. And no, I don't think it's a value of what we were being taught in the 80s and the 90s. But I have to give them another alternative to say, hey, listen to this. Tell me what you think. But also, I would know that these individuals who are running for office, neither one of them are the solution or the answer to all. I would say that I kind of almost feel like I don't agree with either platform 100%. There's something I got to give for the others, but I would also say that they're not trying to remove people. At least I look at, Vice President Harris, in her situation, I would say she's not trying to say, hey, I want to remove people off of my support list. But hopefully, I ask, if she gets in office, sometimes take a stand. That's one of the things that, if I would look at, again, President Obama did what he could do. There were some times where I felt like he allowed others to influence his path versus what he could do for the African American community. We already know that it's always a struggle. So again, of course, I'm a praying man. I want to pray for both, but also I don't want anyone that's unstable handling the reins. I need somebody that's of stable mind and individuals around them that they're willing to listen to and as I would say, be coachable, depending on the given situation. So that's my 2 cents. But again, Brother Jones, I appreciate your historical aspect of what you shared.
Yeah, I think one of the struggles that we have with intergenerational transfer of knowledge is that, depending on how old you are, you grew up in an era of segregation, which the positive byproduct of that was we had cohesive, economically integrated Black communities. Everybody, and the way the structure of our communities our neighborhoods was almost like your village. And there were regular interactions across generations and stuff. And also, things didn't change as quickly. I'm 75. When I'm growing up, my Black experience is not that undifferent to somebody who was old enough to be my father or even a grandfather. It's kind of like, hadn't that much. Some things have changed in America, but the technological change was slow, which means the cultural changes happened relatively slow. If you've been in America the last 50 years, you've gone from paid telephones and yellow pages to cell phone, not only portable mobile phone, but a computer that you can carry in your pocket that is also a phone. And we wonder why kids don't, scholastically, educationally, why kids don't have much concentration and nobody reads for pleasure, because everybody receives all the information in a passive vein through television, social media. So culture changes as quickly as the technologies a society has creates physical change. And culture is nothing more than the way you organize life in a society or country, group of people. So you keep changing the technologies, you'll change the culture, and all of a sudden now you can have 2 or 3 generations sharing a society or ecosystem, and literally they got fundamentally cultural experiences. If you showed a child today, your grandchild, a, a rotary telephone, they wouldn't know what to do with it. When Larry was 10 years old, somebody would give him a quarter to say, this is the call home if something happened. I wouldn't get, ain't nothing you can do with a quarter, and if you had it, you couldn't find a paid telephone because they don't exist anymore. You can't go into somebody's store and say, can I use your telephone because something happened? And they say, sure. Okay. The phone companies used to give away yellow pages and white pages so you can look up numbers. Nobody needs a phone book because that ain't the way we do it. So that's a huge gap between my 10 and 12-year-old experience and somebody's 10 and 12 now. Literally, we got nothing in common, even if we were related.
Professor Rahh, you have to unmute yourself.
Yeah.
I wanted to hand it back over to you at this point.
You know, Mike raised some excellent points, and Brother Davis raised some excellent points. But, you know, like I said, Kamala's going to get the majority of the black vote, even the black men. It's the media saying black men ain't voting for it. It ain't but 10% black people. Let's say it's 12% black people that are hardcore, are Republican. It's always been 12%. They just put them out there more. You got a black Republican Party organization, blacks in the Republican Party. We're diverse people, and we go where some of us. We've always had collaborators in our oppression. I'm going all the way back to slavery. You understand? And Clarence Thomas and the brother out of Florida, and that's big money, Uncle Tom. Big money. His brother running in South Carolina or North Carolina. He's getting all the money he needs to run. And I'm just saying that you can't separate the money from politics. Most people think people with money are in power, and other people think when you're in politics, you go in there poor and you come out rich. They don't have safeguards for corruption, insider trading, the manipulation of the political system. We had the National Black Political Convention in 1972. We had the Million Man March with young people in 96, I think, 1996. Those were young people. In Ferguson, those were young people that got the sister elected and the black people on the council after Michael was killed. Young people, some young people are conscious. I saw today, I don't know if it was Philadelphia, one of the cities, one of the schools let out to let the young people that were 18 go vote. And they let them in a parade. We never had that. The struggle is to continue to pursue justice within the system and without. We have electoral black politics, and we have intergroup politics. The Reverend Sharptons, the Jesse Jacksons, the Martin Luther King, they weren't elected, they emerged. And, some stayed strong, some didn't. The same thing with the Panthers. They called it the Black Panther Party. even though they were integrationists. You had Angela Davis run for president, Eldridge Cleaver run for president. You had Julian Bond in 1968 nominated to be one for vice president. I mean, it's a complex, multi-dimensional thing. You got the National Black United Front. You got we used to have a National Black Bank or Black Economic situation. The oldest civil rights group is, of course, the NAACP. But they were ran in the beginning by the Spengler brothers, two Jews. You know, I mean, our history is complex, but America's never forgave us for fighting and struggling to get out of slavery. They never forgave Haiti. Haiti's got a blockade on Haiti right now. And none of the people in politics talking about that. When Obama was in office, they tried to get him to give Marcus Garvey a pardon. He wouldn't do it because he wasn't a black president. He was a Democratic Party president. And I'm just saying that Kamala's not a black woman's president. I mean, she's going to be at the Democratic Party. She has to do things to make sure they stay in power on the down low. But I appreciate her effort, but you got a number of alternatives that is challenging her. And that's Dr. Abdullah Muhammad and the other brother that's running, but they didn't get on all the ballots. But they did take white people money, Republican money, to get on the ballots. And they're in most of the battle the states, the electoral college states that they got on the ballot. So some people gonna write them in when on the ballots they're not in on, and some people gonna vote for them. But you know, it's a complex situation. And Mike is right. We have to look at things from history because history is the basis of our understanding. Our statistics is the majority of black people that are registered to vote, they vote. But the majority of black people are not registered. They don't participate. You got Nene, Shante, all of them ain't raising their kids to be political conscious. And I'm glad that school stepped in and was teaching them the value. Because when I was coming up, and when Brother Jones was coming up, they never taught us the importance of value. I know out in Compton and Watt, of electoral politics, or who your city councilman was, or who this was and that. But now things is a struggle, and some people are really stepping up to educate our people. I don't know if Kamala's gonna win because Trump them ain't playing fair. It ain't about who voting, it's about who can cheat the best. And by suppression or by just, I mean, this man just accepted and just lie. And evangelical people support him. Oh God, don't tell me you're a Christian, you can support a man convicted of all the issues he's been convicted of. And lies like he breathed, as some people say. And you say you're supposed to be a devout Christian. But anyway, this is a good discussion. And you got the right person leading it because he has the history down in the statistics. But we just, like he said, we about 12% of the United States population. But at the same time, white folks are the minority. They're the minority. Because if all the people of color get together, they can do something. But the white man rule with the gun, nuclear weapons. And even if you win, they'll take it from you. All you have to do is look at history. They take countries every day. We steal groceries in 7-Elevens, snacks and spat. and stuff like that, rob, burglarize our neighborhood, rob and sell dope to each other. This man is stealing countries. And that's what they're doing in Palestine. It's not just genocide, because genocide was here with the Native Americans. So I appreciate the trying to understand it from a standpoint of the balance of us getting women to vote. But never think that that white woman would not vote against her own interests to keep white people in power.
Well, and let's not forget about Rwanda, Venezuela, Cuba. All are victims of imperialism that we're dealing with.
And it's still got a blockade on Cuba.
That's correct. And, we have one last question, and it's from Patrick Davis. Any thoughts on the burning of the ballot boxes, especially if it continues, and the potential effect on election results? That is a confirmed story that emerged today. I believe it's in Seattle, where ballot boxes have, the drop-off ballot boxes have been burned, and you've created a quagmire for local election officials. And, so the issue is, how do we approach that?
For me, unless they start a forest fire with them, that's episodic and inconvenient. But I would say to everybody, that's what losing looks like. I think, Larry, we were talking about, we're both kind of ball junkies, and you're in panic when you come down, and it's still time on the clock, and you start jacking up threes, trying to catch up all at one time. What you're looking at is what panic and losing looks like. Because when you're winning, you don't play like that. It ain't because you more. You just ain't, you got a rhythm. You know what you're doing. You're in control and you're intentional. That's random and chaotic. And ultimately, an election or in a state or even a city is probably not going to come down to a couple of burnt drop boxes.
They burned boxes back, when in the 20 election, mailbox when the COVID, they were burning them. And I agree with Mike. You got some, like I said, there ain't no moral, no ethics. It ain't that best person win. It ain't the majority that win. The whole electoral college is to ensure white people choose who the president is.
That is
the purpose of it.
That's the entire purpose of it, and let's not forget that. The system is rigged, and it's rigged against us and for the minority to rule. It's a apartheid system, if we're going to be frank about it. And we want to thank everyone for attending.
And one other quick point.
Sure.
A lot of white people don't vote.
Absolutely.
Some of them for religious reasons, some of them because they high. You understand? Some of them just don't. I mean, they out doing their thing, especially young white people. You understand? The college ones will vote, some of them, but even some of them don't vote. They're always talking about who don't vote to blame black people. But look at the white people that don't vote. Look at the gay people that don't vote.
One thing we know, though, we paid the most for our right to vote of anyone that has an opportunity to get a ballot this week. And voting day and election day is today.
When we vote, everybody can vote.
That's correct. That's right. That's right. We paved the way. But with early voting, we would like to, emphasize banking the vote. Let's get the votes out, but it doesn't stop there. Mike Jones laid the case so very clearly. No matter what, on November, the 6th and 7th, November 7th, the game really began. because we got to work with whomever's in there. And we, our agenda should be the same. And we have got to push that agenda to, until the wheels come off and we develop another agenda. And it doesn't stop. But we need to understand that our community can swing any election. I mean, look at what Manchin has been able to do on his own. He's gotten more out of his little vote, senatorial vote, than most individuals in our lifetime have. And we need to look at this process along the same way. And no matter who gets in there, our needs, our desires, our wants, our push, our 50, 100, 150, 200-year plan should not change. But we're going to have to advocate it and force it upon whomever's in there.
Larry, you said something that I haven't said out loud in a while, but you made me think of it. And that is about on the issue, quote, of race and politics, or a strategy. I used to tell people that the answer to a Black question is not necessarily African American. And I'll let y'all ponder that for just a minute. And my example was, if you had to choose, if you could pick the next Supreme Court justice, but you had somebody, but they gave you two choices, and you could pick William O. Douglas or Clarence Thomas, who do you pick?
You pick Douglas.
That's what I mean by the answer to a Black question, because Douglas is the best answer if you Black.
Mm-hmm.
So you pick the old white man over the brother because that's a better Black answer than the African American answer. And we conflate and confuse Black and African American. For me, Black is always a intentional, conscious state. African American is your ethnicity. You ain't got nothing to do with your ethnicity, like your height or nothing else. You were born African American. You have to choose to be Black. And my frame of reference for that is always when a young brother is leaving for school, the army, or wherever he's off to. We don't never tell him to stay African American, but we do say stay Black. So obviously that's something you have to do, have to become, and then you have to work to stay in that. But nobody has to tell you stay African American. Nobody even tells you that.
No, there's a level of consciousness associated with being Black. Amos Wilson would say, those are the individuals that go to school in order to come back and solve problems in our community, as opposed to to the problems of the status quo.
You have to choose to be African, and it's a struggle. I mean, to dress African, to name your children on African names is a form of mental liberation, but the indoctrination and the habitual aspects of Black people is they want to be Americans. And that's why they participate in everything Americans do. Halloween's coming up. Everybody teach their kids, don't take nothing from strangers. Then they take them out to get candy from strangers. Everybody tell them, ain't no such thing as ghosts and goblins. And then they dress them up like that, go buy them costumes like that. And then, they don't even know the history of Halloween. You understand where it came from? All they know is a day to go out and get some candy. And then we used to snatch the bag after they come home with the candy. Just take it from the kids. I mean, too much sugar will kill you. Too much sugar make you fat, give you cavity. But you let your kids go out and get it. But nowadays, people have stopped because of the danger. People putting extract in the chocolate. People putting razors in the apples. People doing all kinds of stuff to discourage people. But You know, almost all American holidays are challenging for Black people. You're ritualizing the white folks' culture. That's all.
Agreed. Agreed. Brother Rashiki, you have anything you need to add?
No, this was excellent and looking forward. I'm looking back and I'm looking forward because this is excellent and we got to keep it going. Just like you guys were saying, once the election is over, you still got to stay on the grind. So let's keep doing what we're doing.
I agree. Having said that, we want to thank everyone for ingratiating us and tuning in. Thank you, everyone, for your time. Everyone that subsequently listens to this show. Go right ahead, Brother Rahh.
I just want to tell everybody next Tuesday is voting. And those that's online in Rochester, we're going to announce that we're not going to have my conscious corner. We're going to encourage people to go out and vote, and especially vote for your interests, not the person, your interests, and which candidate on a national level and on the down ballot give you an opportunity to continue your struggle for civil and human rights, where you're at. So you vote for conditions, not the people. And that's what white folks are voting for. They're voting for the conditions that Trump talking about. Y'all, we got to get our country back. When America was great. And, you know, America, it's been great, but it never said it was good. Great and good don't go together. Sure, there's a lot of people that's great, but they weren't good. They didn't do good things. They were great by not people recognizing them in some way or something. But anyway, just letting people know we will not be here next Tuesday, but we will be here the following Tuesday. I think we're going to have Greg Akili of Black Lives Matter. He's the vice president of the LA chapter. They got rid of, in the coalition, Jackie Lacey, who was our district attorney, and put Gascon in. And we had him on earlier this week. Go ahead, prosecute.
Brother, can I just share one more thing real quick?
Absolutely.
So we're getting ready to we're recognizing already the 100th anniversary of the birth of Malcolm X. Of course, May 19th, 1925, he was born. So we have a program tomorrow. We've been having them. We have a lecture series we've been doing every month, and so tomorrow it'll be dealing with the ballot or bullet. What will Malcolm say? We got this brother Salim Abdul Khalik that's speaking in Chicago, and we're going to be sharing copies of Ballot or Bullet. And I meant to mention that earlier, Brother Jones, when you were giving those statistics and those numbers, because at that Ballot or Bullet speech that was given 60 years ago in 1964, I mean, he broke down how we what our numbers were and how we played, like you said, that significant role. So just wanted to let the people know that again, we're going to be revisiting Malcolm tomorrow out here in Chicago.
Is that going to be broadcast online at all?
Right now, we're scheduled to have it Facebook Live. I got to talk with one of my comrades and see if she'll be able to come through and put it on the Zoom. If so, I'll let Brother County.
Please share that.
Okay, we'll do.
Any other announcements? Okay, well, thank you all once again. I think this has been phenomenal. It's always a blessing. I almost feel like I'm still in learning from the wisdom of Mike Jones, and the dialogue that we've had in the group has been fascinating to me from my standpoint as well. So having said that, we want to thank you all for your time and your attention and your contributions. We often talk about the actual riffs that we go off on, but this was a composition, Mike Jones. This, we weren't ad-libbing today. This was a composition. So I want to thank everyone, and we certainly want to thank our West Coast family, and thank you all.